So, most career advice out there, it operates a lot like an architect handing you a set of blueprints.
Right. Like these perfect, pristine blueprints.
Exactly. Handing you these blueprints for this spectacular, sprawling, modern dream house.
Hmm.
And I mean, the rendering looks gorgeous.
Yeah, it always does on paper.
It really does.
Yeah.
But there's this huge catch hidden in the fine print. Those blueprints, they're designed for a perfectly flat, theoretical lot of land.
Uh-huh. A lot that just doesn't exist.
Right. They assume like ideal weather, an unlimited budget, and absolutely zero zoning laws.
It's an entirely fictional landscape.
Completely
The
fictional.
entire design just assumes there's, nothing standing in your way, no complex history buried beneath the soil, no storms gathering on the horizon.
But then, you step out of the theoretical and into the real world. You look at the plot of land you actually own, and it is absolutely not a flat, sunny meadow.
No, it's usually a jagged cliff face.
Yes. The wind is howling, the terrain is deeply uneven, and if you attempt to build that theoretical dream house on your actual cliff, the structure is just, well, it's going to collapse the second a storm hits.
It has to. It has no foundation for that specific environment.
Right. And that harsh reality, that is the entire foundation of the strategy we are unpacking today.
Which is such an important pivot.
It really is. So if you're listening right now, you have the companion workbook for Rise, which is the second section of the Matriarchs field manual sitting right in front of you.
Yep, right between recover and rain.
Exactly. You've already navigated the recover phase, and now you're building toward the rain phase. But to do that, we have to look at the cliff face.
We have to.
We absolutely cannot use toxic optimism to navigate midlife career transitions.
We truly can't. And I mean, that's a massive tonal shift from what most women are used to hearing.
Oh, completely.
If someone is looking for like traditional motivational self-help, this phase is going to feel really jarring.
Definitely. It's a wake-up call.
Because Rise is a strategy document. It is not a feelings document.
Right.
I mean, it is direct, it is warm, but it demands absolute structural honesty.
I want to dig into that demand for structural honesty for a second because optimism is pushed on us so aggressively.
Oh, relentlessly.
When a woman is navigating what the manual calls the convergence window,
That perfect storm.
yeah, that chaotic storm of perimenopause, intense caregiving obligations, rampant ageism in the hiring market, maybe even a late neurodivergent diagnosis society, basically insists on feeding her this aspirational fiction.
Just stay positive. Keep manifesting.
Exactly, just fix your mindset. So why is there such an intense cultural demand for women over 45 to rely on optimism instead of, precision?
Well, honestly, because optimism keeps you cheap.
Wow.
Keep you cheap. It does. It keeps you compliant.
Yeah.
If you are constantly hoping things will just, magically get better, or if you blame your own mindset for your lack of progress.
Then you aren't looking at the system.
Exactly. You aren't looking at the architecture of the system. You aren't demanding that the structure change to accommodate your actual life.
That makes so much sense.
The system pushes aspirational fiction onto women because the system was fundamentally not built for them.
Right, you haven't failed the system.
No, you haven't failed at all. You've just been operating inside an architecture designed for a completely different demographic. So demanding a precise map of a difficult landscape, instead of an optimistic guess about an easy one, it's a radical act of rebellion.
It totally reframes the entire burden of guilt. I'm not broken. The blueprint is just wrong for my land.
Precisely.
So, to build a fortress designed specifically for that jagged terrain, we have to map the actual rock face without apologizing for it.
No apologies.
And looking at the workbook, this clearly begins with the 4 constraint analysis.
Right. That is the non-negotiable foundation of this entire phase. You build from reality, not around it.
From reality. I like that.
Most women fail in their third act because they design a working configuration around like an aspirational, sanitized version of their constraints.
Which just leads to burnout. Now, I'm looking at this 4 constraint model, and to be honest, trying to map health, caregiving, skills, and finances all at the exact same time, it feels paralyzing.
It can feel very heavy.
Why not do them sequentially? I mean, why not figure out the skills first, then see if they fit the health profile?
Because sequential planning is how you end up subsidizing the system with your own metabolic energy.
Wait, what do you mean by that? Subsidizing the system?
Well, if you plan your skills and market offering first, and then try to shoehorn your 20 hours of elder care into that model, something is going to break.
Ah, right.
And usually the thing that breaks is the woman's health. We have to map them simultaneously because the traditional labor market was designed centuries ago for what we call the unencumbered worker.
The person with zero constraints.
Precisely. The model assumes a worker with absolutely no caregiving responsibilities, optimal physical health, and, frankly, a partner at home managing all the domestic logistics.
The 1950s ideal, basically.
Exactly. Corporate infrastructure still inherently assumes this is the default human being. So when a woman in the Convergence window tries to operate within that model, she has to mask her reality.
She has to pretend.
Right.
Yeah.
She pretends her perimenopause symptoms aren't, crushing her energy at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
She takes PTO to secretly manage her mother's hospital discharge. She is constantly subsidizing an outdated system with her own exhaustion.
Wow.
The four-constraint analysis stops that cycle completely.
Okay, let's walk through how to actually execute this, starting with the first constraint, the health profile.
The most physical one.
Yeah. The instruction here is to name active conditions, symptoms, and limitations explicitly. It's asking the reader to pinpoint when their cognitive performance is highest and what environments they physically require.
It demands an audit of your current state, not your hoped-for state.
Not the if I drink enough green juice state.
Exactly. If a 90-minute commute and the sensory overload of an open-plan office eliminate your ability to recover on the weekends, you must name that as a hard boundary.
Which leads right into the caregiving reality. This is where you calculate the weekly hours, the school runs, the medical advocacy, the baseline emergency availability.
The visible logistics.
Yeah. And if I'm a listener mapping this out and I realize I have 25 hours of hard caregiving commitments a week, the traditional market tells me I'm falling behind. It tells me I'm failing my career.
But the strategy document tells you it is simply an act of arithmetic.
Just numbers.
Just numbers. It is not a failure of ambition to say you cannot execute 5 days a week in a corporate office. It is math.
Right.
A working life that doesn't accommodate that math is structurally incompatible with your reality. You are gathering data, not judging your worth.
I love that. You are gathering data, not judging your worth. That takes the emotion right out of it, which is such a relief.
It frees you up to actually strategize.
So then we move to the skills inventory. And the manual draws a massive red line here between a CV and a skills inventory.
They're very different things.
Yeah, if I'm understanding the text correctly, a CV is essentially a sanitized historical receipt, whereas the skills inventory is something much, much deeper.
That's a perfect way to describe it. A sanitized receipt. The CV is just the formal economy's redacted version of your expertise.
Redacted, I like that.
It is a highly filtered list of things the market has historically agreed to pay you for, wrapped in acceptable corporate jargon.
Right.
But the skills inventory includes those formal skills plus your shadow skills.
Ah, the shadow skills. The invisible laborer.
Exactly.
The crisis management, the complex logistical wrangling, the contextual wisdom you excavated back in the recover phase.
Yes, all of it.
The things nobody ever formally gave you a job title for, but that you execute at an absolute elite level.
Because those shadow skills are often what make you a category of one.
A category of one.
And you need to know what those are before you tackle the fourth constraint, which is the financial requirements.
Now this one feels heavy.
Money always does.
Yeah, the manual demands real numbers here. It argues that vague financial goals produce vague strategy, which makes sense.
You can't plan around, I want to be comfortable.
Exactly. But it breaks this down into 3 distinct tiers. The survival number, the security number, and the sovereignty number.
3 very distinct thresholds.
I want to dig into the mechanics of these. Survival is obvious, right?
Yeah.
That's the bare minimum to keep the lights on and the mortgage paid. 0 discretionary spending.
Just staying afloat.
Yeah. Security adds a buffer and a pension contribution. But the sovereignty number, that one shifts the paradigm entirely.
The sovereignty number is the operational core of this strategy.
Tell me more about that.
This is the income level at which you have genuine financial security, the ability to aggressively save, and crucially, the power to say no.
The power to say no.
Sovereignty is fundamentally about the power of refusal.
So the power to walk away from a toxic client or an exploitative contract.
Yes. If you do not calculate and hold your sovereignty number, you will constantly operate from a baseline of financial anxiety.
And anxiety makes you do desperate things.
Always. It always leads you to undersell your value. You will take on clients who drain your energy just to feel safe, which puts you right back into the cycle of exhaustion we are trying to escape.
Right back to square one. So I want to pause and just put myself in the listener's shoes for a moment here.
Okay, let's do it.
I'm staring at these 4 constraints. I have my health limitations documented, my massive caregiving hours logged, my shadow cells mapped, and this intimidating sovereignty number calculated.
A lot of data on one page.
A lot. And looking at all of this together, it feels like undeniable proof that I am entirely disqualified from success.
Right.
It feels like I carry way too much baggage to be commercially viable.
And that reaction is incredibly common. It's exactly why this analysis is so confronting. But we have to question the lens we are looking through.
What do you mean?
Why do we view these realities as disqualifiers?
I guess because the corporate world tells us they are.
Exactly. We do it because we are still judging ourselves against the traditional unencumbered worker model.
Right, the guy with the stay-at-home wife.
Yes, but the entire point of RISE is that you are no longer trying to fit into that market. You are designing an independent working configuration.
You aren't applying for a job on their terms anymore.
Exactly. When you synthesize these 4 constraints, you don't get a list of reasons why you can't work. You get a highly specific map of the only configuration that is actually buildable for you.
Oh, wow. It's the blueprint for the cliff face.
It is the architectural specification. The constraints dictate the terms. They tell you exactly what hours you have available, what delivery model you must use, what location you need, and what premium sector can actually afford your sovereignty number.
That is so empowering.
The constraints are not disqualifying you. They are handing you the design for that fortress.
So we're taking elements historically viewed as vulnerabilities and pivoting them into assets.
Every single one of them.
That mechanism is fascinating, and it applies perfectly to a specific constraint that often hits women right in the middle of this convergence window. The late-in-life health diagnosis.
Yes, specifically constraint 1 in action.
Discovering you are neurodivergent in your 40s or 50s.
The diagnosis advantage.
Now, the manual acknowledges the profound grief that often accompanies an ADHD or autism diagnosis at this stage in life.
It's a huge grieving process.
That devastating realization of, oh, this is why everything has always cost me twice as much energy as everyone else. The grief of decades spent masking.
And masking is perhaps the most expensive invisible labor a woman can perform.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is the constant, conscious monitoring of your natural behaviors just to appear neurotypical, suppressing the need to move, forcing linear eye contact, overscripting every single meeting so you don't miss a beat.
Just to fit into the box.
Right, and the metabolic expense of that performance is catastrophic over a 30-year timeline.
But the text is very firm on this point. RISE is not the place to process that grief.
No, that was the recover phase.
Right. Now, in RISE, we have to look at the strategic commercial utility of the diagnosis. It says that is not a vulnerability, that is a specification sheet.
We really have to look at the data here. The manual cites a startling statistic from the ADHD Foundation UK.
Yeah, this number blew my mind.
61%.
Yeah.
61% of women over 45 with a late diagnosis had experienced a period of unemployment directly attributable to unmanaged symptoms.
That is just, it's a tragedy.
It is, but it is not a personal failing. That is a staggering systemic failure. These women spent 30 years subsidizing employers with a brain the employer didn't know how to utilize, and honestly, a brain the woman herself didn't fully understand the operational requirements of.
Right. It's like forcing a lateral thinking, hyper-focusing processor to perform neurotypical linear administrative tasks in a noisy open plan office.
Yes.
It's like using a supercomputer to run a basic calculator app and then wondering why the battery drains in an hour.
That is a perfect analogy. And the mandate in RISE is explicit. You must never do that again.
Never again.
You are not building a working life that simply tolerates your neurology. You are building one exclusively designed to play to its inherent strengths.
But practically speaking, how does someone navigate disclosure?
It's tricky in traditional employment.
Right, because if I go to a client or an employer and say, hi, I have ADHD, the stigma is still very, very real. People make massive biased assumptions about reliability and competence. Isn't framing this as an advantage incredibly risky?
It is deeply risky if you use the medicalized language of deficit.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, the manual makes the brilliant distinction here between the legal framework of HR and the strategic framework of the independent market. In traditional employment, say in the UK, disclosure is a legal mechanism.
To get protections.
Exactly. It triggers the Equality Act 2010, requiring the employer to make reasonable adjustments. You are asking for an accommodation.
But in the independent market, if I'm consulting or freelancing, clients don't care about my medical history.
They do not care. They care about your output.
Right.
The independent market operates on commercial value, not HR compliance. And commercially speaking, the traits of neurodivergence are highly sought after.
Which is why the manual provides the translation table.
Yes, you do not use the language of struggle. You use the language of premium output.
Let's walk through some of these translations, because this is where the strategy gets incredibly tangible.
Let's do it.
If I'm looking at my constraints, I might internally feel I struggle to maintain focus in conventional office environments. The translation table says I should never say that out loud to the market.
You never say that. Instead, you translate that reality into its commercial equivalent.
Which is?
I deliver highest value output in project-based complex problem contexts with defined outcomes.
Oh, that sounds so much better. Okay, here's another one. I find it difficult to switch between tasks quickly.
Translated. I bring exceptional depth of analysis to high-stakes, single-focus briefs.
Wow. Okay, what about this one? I sometimes miss social cues in group settings, or, I come across as too blunt.
Translated. I operate with unusual clarity and objectivity in high conflict or high ambiguity environments where others tend to lose focus.
Both versions of those statements are factually describing the exact same human brain.
The exact same brain.
But the first version makes you sound like a liability, and the second version makes you sound like an elite asset. One costs you the room, the other gets you the contract.
Because modern clients, especially in the digital economy, they are drowning in massive chaotic problems.
They don't have time for the struggle language.
Right. They don't need a neurotypical middle manager to file paperwork. They need someone who possesses rapid pattern recognition across disparate systems.
They need the supercomputer.
Exactly. They need lateral thinking under intense time pressure. They're actively looking for the exact specification sheet your brain provides. You aren't asking for an accommodation. You are offering them an unfair advantage.
That concept, taking what the traditional world labels a weakness and translating it into a high-value commercial asset, that is the engine of this entire phase.
It is the core mechanism.
It's how you have to present your entire identity to the market. And that takes us directly into the mechanics of the Trojan Horse Protocol and the language of the third act.
This protocol is so crucial because it forces us to confront the reality of the ageist labor market head-on.
Which is brutal.
It is. The core insight here is harsh, but it is necessary for survival. The traditional labor market flawlessly and ruthlessly discriminates against an older woman seeking employment.
It's not a glitch in the system.
No.
It is the architecture of the system.
Yes, but here is the vulnerability in their architecture.
Yeah.
The market is vastly less sufficient at discriminating against a domain expert delivering specific value.
It's like hacking a firewall.
Exactly like hacking a firewall.
You don't stand outside the corporate firewall with a picket sign begging the algorithm to, check its bias and let you in. Applicant tracking systems in recruitment software, they do not have hearts.
They don't have empathy.
They just parse keywords. So you simply dress your data in the exact code the firewall is programmed to wave through. You build a wooden horse, hide your decades of experience inside it, and wheel it right through the front gates.
And the mechanics of this Trojan horse are entirely about output-first positioning. You do not lead with your history.
Right.
You do not lead with your credentials, your age, or the phrase, I have 30 years of experience.
But wait, why not? I feel like 30 years of experience is like the ultimate badge of honor.
It is a badge of honor, absolutely. But the moment you say 30 years, the ageist bias in the firewall engages. The algorithm, or the 28-year-old recruiter looking at your CV, instantly thinks, expensive, slow to adapt, stuck in her ways.
Boom, the firewall blocks you.
Exactly. Instead, you must lead with the outcome. The expertise must enter the room before the age does.
So how do we physically build this wooden horse? The manual outlines an output-first positioning statement, which relies heavily on translating those shadow skills we talked about.
Yes, translation is key.
I think the best way to understand this is to look at the example of Pauline from the text. Her story just perfectly illustrates this translation process.
Pauline's case study is vital. It really grounds this theory. So she spent 12 years outside the formal economy as a stay-at-home mother, specifically advocating for a child with highly complex medical needs.
Right. And if she had used the standard CV framing, the version she would feed into a cold application portal, it would read something like, stay-at-home mother, highly organized, good at paperwork, managed household schedules.
And the commercial market value of that framing is exactly zero.
Zero.
The applicant tracking system tosses it in the digital trash before a human ever sees it.
But Pauline did the constraint audit. She looked at what she actually spent a decade doing. She was managing brutal insurance disputes, orchestrating multidisciplinary care teams across different hospital systems, and auditing massive, highly technical volumes of medical records.
Serious logistical operations.
Absolutely. So she applied the language of the third act. She translated her shadow skills, good at paperwork, became crisis negotiation and complex healthcare logistics.
Brilliant. But the translation is only half the battle.
Right.
If Pauline tried to sell crisis negotiation to other mothers at the school gates, she wouldn't have a business.
Hmm.
She had to find the right target for her Trojan horse.
The right firewall.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She identified independent, private healthcare clinics that were bleeding money and losing patients because their onboarding administration was an absolute disaster.
So she didn't apply for an administrative assistant job.
No. She approached them as a fractional patient experience director.
She just stepped right over the firewall, and the result. She now charges £2,500 a month per clinic to audit and rebuild their intake systems.
It's incredible.
From £0 an hour to £2,500 a month, performing the exact same logistical labor she did for her family. She just aimed it at a different target and wrapped it in corporate language.
And we have to highlight how she got into those rooms. She used mechanism 3 of the Trojan horse protocol, the warm network strategy.
Very important.
Pauline did not secure those fractional contracts by submitting a resume to an online job board. The cold application market is profoundly hostile to midlife women. You cannot rely on it.
It's a rigged game.
It is.
Huh.
You have to utilize a warm networking forward into the room you are trying to enter, not backward into the industry you left.
Because in a warm network, you bypass the keyword reading software entirely. You are having a human-to-human conversation where your context, your authority, and your domain expertise can be felt before anyone ever asks for a resume.
It fundamentally changes the power dynamic. This is why the manual insists that you stop speaking like a volunteer.
Stop speaking like a volunteer.
Yes. The market does not buy your skills. It buys your description of them. The word helping is paid in gratitude. The word consulting is paid in gold.
I love that distinction. Paid in gratitude versus paid in gold.
It changes everything.
So you've built your Trojan horse and you've translated your language, but you still need to figure out exactly what it is you are selling and exactly who is desperate to buy it.
You need a target.
You need to point the horse at the right target, which is where the minimum viable offer, or the MVO, comes into play. The text calls this finding the starving crowd.
Finding the starving crowd is perhaps the most critical market intelligence exercise in the entire workbook.
Because without them, you have no business.
Right. The starving crowd is not a demographic of people who merely need your skill in theory. It is a specific group of people who are currently actively losing time or bleeding money because they lack the specific operational intelligence that you possess.
You're looking for the person who is losing sleep over a problem that you can solve in your sleep.
Precisely. But here is the trap, and it is where so many brilliant women stumble.
Okay, what's the trap?
They get trapped in the planning phase, they identify a vague problem, and then they spend 6 months building a beautiful website, agonizing over branding colors and printing embossed business cards.
Oh, I know so many people who have done exactly that, and the manual calls this out so brutally. It says this endless planning phase is actually a trauma response to system failure.
It absolutely is. When you have been rejected or marginalized by the traditional system, putting yourself out there independently feels incredibly unsafe.
Right, your nervous system is in overdrive.
So you use perfectionism as a shield to delay potential rejection. If you are just building your website, you don't have to face the live market. You don't have to risk a no.
You're building a beautiful product for nobody.
Yes, and complexity is the enemy of execution here. The strategy phase demands that you differentiate sharply between hiding behind a perfect theoretical product and testing an imperfect offer in the real world.
Which brings us to a tool I find fascinating. The napkin strategy.
A great tool.
The manual argues that if your business model cannot fit on a cocktail napkin, it's a hobby, not a business. The napkin only has room for 4 things: the problem, the person, the pill, and the price.
It forces absolute clarity and strips away all the hiding places. Let's break down why each matters.
Go for it.
The problem must be a commercially urgent headache, not a background irritation. People do not pay premium rates to solve background irritations.
Right.
If a small business owner wishes their company culture was a bit nicer, that's an irritation. If they are losing $10,000 a month in employee turnover because their onboarding process is toxic, That is active pain.
And the person is the specific demographic currently losing sleep over that active pain.
Exactly.
The pill is the tangible deliverable you sell to cure it. Not a vague offer of support or guidance, but a concrete solution, like a fully mapped 4-week onboarding protocol.
Yes. And finally, the price. It must be a specific number, not a range, an exact number. Ranges invite negotiation downward.
So once you have this napkin filled out, the instruction is to stop planning. You go to the market immediately, but you don't pitch it at full price on day one.
No, you use the beta rate.
Right. The manual introduces this concept of the beta rate. How does that work in practice?
The beta rate is your testing mechanism. You offer your solution to a highly targeted prospect at 50 to 70% of your intended full price.
Okay, stop right there.
I know.
Let me push back on this because I can hear the listener screaming at her dashboard right now.
Oh.
We are spending this entire deep dive telling her to be fiercely protective of her worth, to calculate her sovereignty number, to stop subsidizing the system, and to stop speaking like a volunteer.
Yes.
Isn't offering a 50% beta discount directly contradicting that empowerment? I mean, isn't she just undervaluing herself all over again?
It looks like that on the surface. I completely understand the resistance. But it misunderstands the currency of the modern digital economy.
How so?
This strategy requires a mercenary mindset. You are not working for less value. You are simply being paid in a hybrid currency.
A hybrid currency.
Okay, you are receiving cash, yes, but you are also extracting foundational market data and proof of concept. A powerful, verified case study is an asset that will allow you to command premium rates for years. You are buying data with the discount.
Oh, wow. That reframes the power dynamic completely. It's not, please hire me, I'll do it cheap. It's a highly strategic transaction.
Exactly. But the mandate in the text is absolute.
Yeah.
You never, ever work for free.
Never for free.
Working for free signals zero value. It trains the client to view you as disposable. The beta rate pitch is an equal exchange of power. You say, you get 2,000 pounds of value for 500 pounds, and I get full access to your metrics to build a case study that stress tests my systems.
And the manual forces you to execute this immediately. It tells the reader to name 3 specific people in their network right now and send the pitch.
Today.
If they say yes, you have a business. If they say no, you have data. Both outcomes are highly useful. Neither outcome is a failure.
But to actually send that email, to test that offer and find the starving crowd, you have to do the one thing the system has trained you for decades not to do.
And what's that?
You have to leave the shadows.
You have to become dangerously visible.
Very dangerously visible.
Which transitions us into the concept of scared sovereignty and the voice of fire. I want to talk about the resistance to visibility because for a woman in midlife, it is intense and visceral.
It is deeply ingrained.
The manual calls this resistance internalized erasure and gives it a specific persona, the gatekeeper.
The gatekeeper is that insidious voice screaming in your head the exact moment you try to hit publish.
Right.
It tells you, who do you think you are? You are too old to pivot. You are too late to start this. You are taking up too much space.
And we usually mislabel that voice, right? We call it imposter syndrome and assume it's a personal psychological flaw we need to fix in therapy.
We pathologize it? But the manual explicitly renames it because it is not a personal flaw. It is programming.
Systemic programming.
Yes. It is a highly effective systemic program designed to keep midlife women in the maintenance phase of life.
Wow, the maintenance phase.
Society needs you maintaining homes, maintaining community peace, maintaining the status quo, and staying quietly invisible. If you are building sovereign wealth, you aren't maintaining their systems.
There is a quote in this section that hit me like a freight train. The enemy is not your lack of ability. The enemy is your compliance.
It's chilling, isn't it? Overcoming that compliance requires practicing what the text calls scared sovereignty.
Meaning you do it scared.
Exactly. It acknowledges that the fear will not magically disappear. So you do the live stream with shaking hands, you hit publish on the manifesto post with a racing heart, you show up publicly, wrinkles, gray hair, and all.
Because it's not just about you.
Right. Your visibility serves a dual purpose. It markets your offer, yes, but it also gives permission to the woman who is 5 steps behind you, watching silently to see if it's safe to step into the light.
That is so powerful. But the Trojan horse protocol requires more than just turning on a camera and smiling. You have to build a publicly visible evidence base of your expertise before you need it.
Yes.
And this leads to a scathing critique of most professional content, like the stuff we see flooding LinkedIn every single day.
Oh, the manual is brutal on this point. It argues that 90% of professional content does absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all.
It doesn't build authority, it doesn't attract the starving crowd, and it disappears into the algorithmic void within 48 hours because it refuses to actually say anything.
Right. It hedges, it qualifies every statement, it bends over backward to present both sides. It's wrapped in so much softening language that no one could possibly take offense. I like to call it beige content.
Beige content, that is exactly what it is.
It's the elevator music of thought leadership designed to offend no one, but consequently it is loved by absolutely no one.
And we have to be clear about why women write beige content. It isn't a lack of expertise.
No, definitely not.
The women using this manual have decades of hard-won, pressure-tested intelligence. They write beige content because they are terrified of being disliked.
The compliance programming again.
Exactly. But in the independent market, if you are not provoking someone, you are not saying anything of consequence.
The strategy requires rejecting the beige. Your content must provoke. To help with this, the manual outlines the exact structure of a manifesto post.
Yes, a very specific structure.
This isn't a fluffy listicle of 5 tips for corporate wellness. It is a structural argument designed to plant a flag in the ground.
The architecture of the manifesto post is highly specific. Step 1 is the hook.
The slap, the uncomfortable truth.
Exactly. You have to jolt the reader awake. For example, a hook might be, your corporate job is never going to love you back.
Ouch. Okay, step 2 is the evidence. The scar, the documented detail. You can't just throw a punch. You have to back it up with concrete reality.
Right. 3 managers, all younger than my own daughter, signed off on my performance review and told me I lacked agility.
Step 3 is the turn, the lesson extracted from the scar.
That was the moment I understood the review wasn't actually about my performance. It was about their discomfort with my seniority.
And finally, step 4 is the call, the sword.
Stop waiting for a system to value you when it was built to exploit you. Start building your own infrastructure.
The fury is the hook, and the evidence is the authority. I love that.
When you write with that level of structural honesty, you aren't just optimizing for a platform's daily algorithm. You aren't executing a content strategy. You are executing a presence strategy.
Let's pull this two apart because that distinction feels critical. What is the difference between content and presence?
A content strategy is chasing dopamine and likes for a week.
Right.
A presence strategy is building a permanent, searchable historical record of your intellect. It is ensuring that in 5 years, when a think tank researcher is looking into midlife economic inactivity, or when an AI language model is pulling data on the Convergence window,
it finds you.
Yes, your name, your frameworks, and your indexed authority are what surface.
And to build that digital real estate, the manual notes a strategic alliance with LaunchU to provide the necessary digital infrastructure.
Right. Building sovereign wealth requires robust tools payment gateways, email distribution networks, hosting platforms. LaunchU provides the operational backbone.
But the manual issues a very stern warning here. Do not confuse buying the tools with doing the work.
Oh, that's such a common trap.
I bought the software, therefore I am building a business.
Exactly. The text says, the platform gives you the bricks. You still have to build the house.
LaunchU is your supply line, but you are the architect.
You are.
And when you finally start laying those marks, when you step into the light, pitch your minimum viable offer, and leave the structural safety of your old corporate life, you are inevitably going to hit a terrifying void.
And that void is the ultimate test of everything you've built in this phase. This is the reality of crossing the gap.
The gap. Just hearing that phrase probably makes a lot of listeners' stomachs drop.
This is the hardest part.
The manual defines the gap as the period, typically 1 to 6 months, between exiting your old structure and your new configuration generating sustainable replacement income.
It is the single most dangerous moment in the entire framework.
Because you run out of money.
Not just that.
Yeah.
It's dangerous because it feels exactly like failure.
Ah, the perception of it.
Yes. When you send out your beta rate pitches and you get a week of silence, it feels like rejection. When you reach month 2 and your revenue is less than your monthly burn rate, it feels like undeniable proof that this whole plan was a ridiculous fantasy.
The silence feels like rejection, but as the manual says, it is just construction.
Exactly. This is where we have to redirect from emotional spiraling back to sharp, objective logic.
Back to the math.
The gap is not a failure. It is mathematics. A 3-month-old independent business simply does not generate the compounding revenue of a 30-year-old corporate career.
It can't.
Right. The lack of immediate income is not a verdict on your capability. It is just the arithmetic of starting a new engine.
So practically speaking, what does this mean when the listener is sitting at her kitchen table in week 3, her savings are draining, and absolutely no one is replying to her emails? Because structural logic is great, but that panic is visceral and real.
The panic is very real, and it is entirely predictable. That panic is exactly what the war chest, which the reader was instructed to build back in the recover phase, is designed to absorb.
Okay, remind us about the war chest.
The war chest is the funded gap. It allows you to build without desperation, because a desperate woman undersells.
Always.
If you're panicking about next week's grocery bill, you will drop your sovereignty rate. You will take on a nightmare client just to fill your calendar. You will build your new house on sand.
But with the war chest.
A funded woman operating out of her war chest can hold her rate, endure the silence, wait for the right client, and build a foundation that actually holds.
To keep the listener from spiraling during this period, the manual provides a week-by-week, 90-day pipeline tracker. And the genius of this tracker is that the metrics shift depending on where you are in the timeline.
It keeps you focused on the right things at the right time.
For instance, in weeks 1 through 4, revenue is explicitly not the metric you track.
Correct. If you track revenue in week 2, you will quit by week 3.
Because there isn't any.
Exactly. In the first 4 weeks, activity is the only metric that matters. You track how many outreach conversations you initiated, how many discovery calls you booked, how many manifesto posts you published.
You are measuring the volume of the pipeline.
Yes, because an empty calendar today guarantees 0 income next month.
Then, in weeks 5 through 8, the metric shifts to conversion.
Right. Of the 10 conversations you had, how many translated into actual proposals sent?
And if there is friction, if people are talking to you but not buying, the manual says to adjust your framing first, not your price.
Never drop the price immediately. It is almost always a problem with how the Trojan horse is presented.
And then it is only in weeks 9 through 12 that you begin tracking consistent closed revenue.
But while you are in the gap, actively having these discovery calls and pitching your offer, you have to be prepared for resistance.
The market will push back.
The market is going to try to use your history against you. They will point out the redundancy, the gap in your employment, your age, or your sudden change of direction. And this is why the manual insists on the objection rehearsal.
This might be my favorite concept in the whole section.
That's so empowering.
Every objection a hiring manager or a potential client raises is essentially a misread of your value, and your job is not to apologize for the misread. Your job is to hand them the correct reading.
But you cannot invent this reframe on the fly.
No.
If a client hits you with a tough objection and you have to pause, think, and struggle to find the right words, the power dynamic has already shifted against you.
You've lost the room.
A reframe that requires effort in the moment has failed. It must be practiced in advance until it is a reflex, because a reflex is a weapon.
Let's actually role-play one of these to show how it works. Let's take the overqualified objection, which hits midlife women constantly.
All the time.
A hiring manager or a prospective client looks at your resume, sees decades of senior complex experience, and says, "You seem overqualified for this project. We're looking for someone a bit more junior."
Right.
What are they actually communicating when they say that?
They are communicating fear.
Fear.
Yes. They fear that you will be bored by the work. They fear that you will demand too much money. They fear that you, as an experienced matriarch, will be hard to manage for a younger leader. Or they fear that you will simply leave the second a better corporate offer comes along.
Right. And the old beige compliant response, the one we've been conditioned to give, would be to shrink ourselves to soothe their fear.
We make ourselves smaller.
We'd say, "Oh no, I'm really just looking for a simpler role right now. I'm happy to step back and take direction."
Which costs you the room instantly. It signals that you are either desperate or hiding something.
Instead, you deploy the reflex reframe. You address their underlying fear head-on without apologizing for a single day of your seniority.
You step into the power of it.
So, when they say, "You seem overqualified," you look them in the eye and say, "I'm not overqualified, I'm fully loaded."
I love that. Fully loaded.
I possess high-stakes literacy. I have managed complex stakeholders in crisis environments without a safety net or a budget. I don't need training wheels, I need a runway. You are getting a seasoned veteran for the price of a standard hire. That is not a flight risk. That is a guaranteed ROI.
The energy in the room completely changes.
It's a mic drop.
The expertise enters the room. You dismantle the objection not by arguing, but by showing them that your seniority is the exact operational intelligence required to solve their active pain.
You correct the misreading with absolute authority.
And reaching that level of conviction where you can deliver that reframe without flinching is really only possible if you have survived the terror of the gap.
As the text summarizes so beautifully, the gap is not where the plan fails. It is where a woman finds out just how serious she is about the plan.
It is the crucible. And navigating it successfully means we have reached the conclusion of the RISE strategy.
We made it through the phase.
We have mapped the harsh reality of the constraints. We have weaponized the shadow skills. We have built a Trojan horse to bypass the algorithmic firewalls.
We have defined a minimum viable offer and tested it on a starving crowd.
We have stepped into the fire of public visibility, and we have mathematically crossed the gap.
And the manual makes one final, crucial distinction here. RISE is not finished when you have perfected your offer.
Perfection is a myth.
RISE is finished when the offer has been tested in the live market. You are no longer standing outside the corporate gates waiting for gatekeepers who lost their keys decades ago.
You have built your own entrance.
It is the foundational strategy of sovereign wealth. It makes absolutely no apology for demanding profit, and it sets the structural stage for the final phase of the manual. Reign, where you take the architecture you have just proven and you begin to scale it.
The scaling phase is where the magic really compounds.
We've spent this entire deep dive looking intimately at how you, the listener, can build a structure that finally unapologetically serves you. We've talked about building a fortress on your own specific cliff face, but before we go, I want you to zoom out and look beyond your own individual blueprint.
The macro scale.
Yes, think about the macro scale of what this workbook is proposing. What happens to the global economy when an entire generation of midlife matriarchs stops speaking like volunteers?
It shifts everything.
What happens to the corporate ecosystem when millions of women in the Convergence window suddenly stop subsidizing broken systems with their own exhaustion, stop masking their brilliant neurodivergent brains, and start demanding to be paid in gold for their operational intelligence?
The whole system has to recalibrate.
You aren't just building an independent business for yourself. By opting out of an architecture that exploits you and building one that sustains you, you are actively participating in a massive systemic redistribution of economic power.
It's an absolute economic revolution.
And the revolution needs a writer, so
Yeah.
what's your next chapter going to say?